Hi, now we're going to discuss the motors used in the Vision 3D printer. In the kit, you will see that there are actually a total of 5 motors because it's a Prusa style RepRap printer. It uses 5 motors, 2 for the Z-axis, 1 for the X-axis, 1 for the Y-axis, and 1 for your extruder. We're not so much concerned about the extruder motor right now. It already comes pre-attached to your extruder that's already been built. You might need to wire tie a couple of the wires, a little bit more than what I have. In most of the kits, they aren't already pre-wire tied. So anyway, one thing to check on all 5 motors, first things first, is to check, and as you look at the motors, they should have, when you look at them, it should be red, blue, green, black for your motor connectors in the connector. And it doesn't really matter whether it's red, blue, green, black, where you can't see the silver leads, or if it's red, blue, green, black when you can see the silver leads. The great news about these kinds of connectors is that they can be plugged in either way. So so long as the wires are red, blue, green, black, check all 5 motors just to make sure we haven't messed up in when we attach the connectors. So that's the first thing. Second thing is the tools that you will need. Very simple. You'll need needle nose pliers, mainly for the wire cutters. And then you'll also need the smallest of the Allen wrenches. And this is a 1.5 millimeter Allen wrench. The only purpose of this Allen wrench is to tighten up the small little set screws or grub screws that are attached to the pulleys. Each pulley has 2 of them. There's a total of 4 in the kit, and with that, that's the only reason you actually need this small little Allen wrench. So what we're going to do, we're going to set aside the motors, the 2 motors that have the longest leads. And if you look, one of the motors has a really long lead to it, and that's your Z-axis motor that's the farthest away from the controller. Normally 3 of the motors will have the exact same length of leads. However, the one that would have the second longest lead, if there is one, that would also be a Z-axis motor. The one that would have the shortest leads, if there's one that has a shorter lead, that would be your Y-axis motor. And the one that has the second shortest lead would be your X-axis motor. So what you want to do is kind of just hold the leads together and see, and whichever one it is, let's split them up that way. So first things first, the X and the Y motors will actually get a pulley. The Z motors each get these vibration isolation pads that we pre-cut. So I made a quick little stamping die, and with that, then you can actually pull these apart pretty easily. They stick, but it's not a kind of stickness that's like a permanent adhesive. That's really kind of what you want, when you're looking at some sort of gasketing or vibration isolation unit. Use the small little Allen wrench and poke out the little pieces that are there, just in case they haven't already fallen out. And that way you get those out of the way, when you go to put screws in there, if you want to put screws in there, or if you want to go ahead and instead of using screws, a lot of people like to use wire ties to tie the motors on there, and that way they're not so bound up. Then what you will do is you will take the Z-axis motors and you kind of line it up. If you look, believe it or not, the die was the exact fit, and you want to be able to see the holes. Put one thumb on there and line them up. They are a little bit squishy, so you can pretty much get them to comply pretty easily. And then push them down, and that's all you really need to do. Do it for the second one also. Peel this off of there, and the rest of it's just pretty much trash. You don't need it for anything. Anyway, poke out the little holes, and once the little holes are poked out, then you take the second longest lead wire motor, if there is one, and you just place it over top of there. And it gives it a little bit more of a professional feel to actually have had this pre-stamped out with a die, as opposed to trying to cut this material with either scissors or a straight blade razor. It really is hard to do very efficiently. And so with a die, what we do is we spend a little bit of time machining it, and and we stamp it. So there's your Z-axis motors. Those are good to go. Now for the Y-axis motors and the X-axis motors, you need to put the pulleys on. For the X-axis motor, which is the one with the second to shortest leads, what we will do is we will take it, and if you look at the motor, it has a flat that's already been pre-ground on there, and that flat, we're going to take advantage of it for our pulleys. You know, we don't need two flats ground on, even though we do have two set screws. We only need one, really, because we're not using too high torque. What you want to do is, if you have to, go ahead and let's just actually unwind the set screws totally out of there for one of them. Okay, so we're going to set that aside. Make sure you don't lose it. It's very, very hard to find if you actually drop it on the floor. And for the second one, we're going to kind of back it out a little bit, but we're not going to back it out all the way. What we want to do is we want it to actually kind of go onto the motor, and so we're going to leave our set screw and Allen wrench in there. And we're going to kind of line up where the flat is to where the Allen set screw is. So, and if you look, I haven't quite backed it off just enough to get it on there. Okay, and then what you want to do is kind of retighten it a little bit. You know, we want it to slide, but we don't want it to slide so super freely. And what we're going to do with the X-axis motor is that we're going to slide it almost so that it is almost touching the silver here. So if you look there, there's a little bit of a gap, but there's not much. To try and measure it would be very, very hard. If you have to, take a piece of paper, fold it over maybe 2 or 3 times, and that would be about the thickness that we're looking for. So we're going to tighten that up. And what you want is that all motors have a little bit of give or take, but if you can look in there, that has just a little bit of light that can go through there. And that's what we're looking for the X-axis. For the X-axis, this hub, which is what has these set screws, has to go out. For the Y-axis, the hub, which is this, will actually be on the inside towards the motor. So let's grab our second set screw, put the motor down. You know, use 2 hands just because these set screws are very, very small. And put that set screw back on the Allen wrench. And now we're going to try and line it up and twist it. And we're going to twist it a pretty good twist. I mean, once it touches probably an extra quarter turn. And we're going to go back to the original one, kind of twist it, make sure that it's pretty tight on there, because that's the one that's the main one holding it. And then that's pretty much all you need. So you don't want the gold part to touch the silver part of the motor, but you do want it as absolutely close as you can get it. So that's what we're doing. X-axis motor is done. Now we're looking for the Y-axis motor. Same deal. We will take one of the Allen, one of the set screws out of here, and it doesn't really matter which one you take out, you know, so long as one of them's out. So we're unscrewing that, put that on the table, and the second one, just like before, we're going to back it off a little bit, but not totally take it out. And then we're going to take our motor. Same deal, find out where the flat is, and here's the flat. And we're going to line up our set screw with there and get that on there. And then we're going to retighten it. Oh, you know what? I put it backwards like I'm building an X-axis motor. Let's flip that over. Hub in for the Y-axis motor. Okay, so here we are. We've got the motor in there, and what we're looking for is that you can measure it if you want to. I'm kind of like adjusting this a little bit, but what we're looking for is that we want about 3 millimeters between the end of this motor shaft here and where the pulley is right there, or about 1/8 of an inch. We don't want it totally to the end. We don't want it, you know, totally in all the way either. So we don't want this pulley either end. We just want about 3 millimeters to 1/8 of an inch there. So what we're going to do once we get that there, which is about there right now, so we're going to tighten it up. Okay, let's grab our second set screw again and use both hands because these things are very small and easy to lose. And we're going to actually put that on there. Now these pulleys are aluminum, so they can't really take all the torque that steel can. So don't use the long end to actually torque these down like if you were to put in there and then, you know, expect it to actually hold up. But anyway, there we go. We're going to check the second one just to make sure it's still tight. And Y-axis motor is done. So there's the 4 motors that are done right now. Last thing that you need to do is, usually what I end up doing is I put in some wire ties. I don't totally wire tie it every inch, but about every 4 inches, every 100 millimeters. First things first, there's 2 extra wires to these motors because they're actually a 6-lead motor. We didn't need it, so I clipped them already. If it turns out that I've actually included them in the kit, you want to clip the white wire and the yellow wire because they're not needed. We're just going to put a bunch of wire ties on these. So usually I wire tie the first one really close to the motor like that. That way it keeps the yellow lead and the white lead so that they don't touch anything. So we're going to go through, put like 2 or 3 of these on each one of them. And all that does is it keeps the wires from getting in your way. And later we'll actually wire tie them probably a little bit more, either to the frame if it's like a Z-axis motor going across, or to like for the extruder motor to the heaters. Okay, so we put 4 of them on there. Take your wire cutters and use the wire cutter part of your needle nose pliers and clip those off. And Y motor's good to go. We're going to do that for the other 3 motors and we'll be good. What you kind of want to make sure is that as you're tightening these up, that the wires all kind of stay together, are the same length. If you have to, you can actually pull one wire, like that blue wire was sticking out a little bit more. And that lines it up pretty good. We're tightening them up pretty tight because, we're not going to add anything extra in between these 4 wires. So, same deal. Take your wire cutters that are on your needle nose pliers and get rid of those. And your X motor is done. We're going to do the same thing to the Z-axis motors and we'll call it done for the motors. Clip them. Oh, that one I kind of missed a little bit. Not a big deal. We'll just clip that wire tie because we got plenty of extras. And we'll put another one on there. And clip it. And the long lead motor for the Z-axis, every 4 inches, every 8 inches, somewhere in there would be just perfectly fine. You're going to end up wire tying it a little bit more to actually the frame because the last thing you want is a bunch of dangling wires sticking out there, especially for a motor wire. So Later on, we're going to actually wire tie parts of the 2Z motors together. And so there we go. Go ahead and clip the excess parts of those off for each one of these. And we are done. So what you have, two Z-axis motors, your X-axis motor, and your Y-axis motor, and then of course your extruder motor, and that's good to go.